Okay, let's try this again. It looks like everything is working. Hey, welcome to another episode of Superhero Deep Dive. Sorry about that weird intro. I got a new recording program because I upgraded my system from Windows to Linux. So everything is working a little bit more differently than I thought it would. And it's kind of going to be a learning experience for me today. So yeah, but the show must go on. We got to keep going. So let's do this. Before I get started, I have to give my normal disclosures that the information is pulled from different sources across the internet and may or may not be completely complete, but they do give a really good insight on the current superhero that we're talking about. So I am super excited. I'm going to be talking about Namorita today. Yes. Namorita. The reason I'm doing that is because Namor is making his big screen debut soon. So we want to make, a little splash and kind of get someone that could be a little Easter egg seen in the movies. So, yeah. Before I get started on her, like always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, critiques, requests for heroes, please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at Super Deep Dive, and you can use the hashtag Superhero Deep Dive. Also, if you want to email me, you can email me directly at b4itall@yahoo.com. You can, if you're listening on Outworld Fleet Radio, I want to thank you. It's either a Tuesday or Thursday because I'm on throughout the day on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The website for that is www.un-conventional.com/radio. And if you are watching the slideshow on Twitter, I'm sorry. It's probably looking really janky this time. I'm trying to figure out the new program and get a better control over it. But you can always leave a comment on there as well. So yeah, I think that covers all our bases. But yeah, Namorita is really cool. I was always a big fan of her. And, I always thought she was a strong character. And she deserves her spot. And it's kind of funny because she was a member of the New Warriors for a long time. And she would always get commented on about wearing her bikini or wearing a green swimsuit. Because that was kind of her superhero outfit. And it was always kind of funny. And, she was definitely not a piece of meat. They would make jokes about it, but, everyone kind of respected her, which I thought was really cool. But her real name is Namorita Prentice. She's actually a mutant clone of her mother, Namora, and a member of the New Warriors, primarily. She was actually killed in the explosion at Stanford. That started the superhero civil war, and she was later restored to life, but we'll get back into that in a little bit. Namorita's mother, Namora, was the first cousin of Namor, and like Namor was a hybrid with superhuman strength and the power of flight by using the ankle wings on her feet. Unlike Namor, though, her mother was human and her father Atlantean. And I think Namor had it kind of the other way around, where his mother was Atlantean and his father was human. So they were just all about crossbreeding, which is cool, whatever. When Namorita first visited New York City, Namor introduced her to his longtime friend Betty Dean Prentice, whom Namorita would eventually consider a guardian and second mother. That's why she used the Prentice as her last name, at least while she's on the surface world. It just makes things easier. Betty Prentice would eventually be killed by Dr. Lemuel Dorcas, who is one of Namor's enemies. But really, you're going to be an evil villain if your last name is Dorcas. Because there's nothing you can do to redeem yourself from that. Like, can you imagine growing up? It's like, oh, look, it's Dorcas. Dorcas is here. You're gonna end up being scarred. You're going to end up being a bad guy. Like, it's kind of a label. Like, he should have changed his name. But sometime later, Namorita enrolled in college at Empire State University. And during a trip, she was forced to battle longtime Fantastic Four foe, Terex. She was joined by 5 other young superheroes, And after Namorita and Nova subdued Terex by severing his contact with the ground, the six formed the New Warriors. When Namor decided to start a financial empire a short time later, Namorita, or they call her Nita a lot of times, it's kind of a nickname for us, and Nita joined him as a member of the board, and it was called Oracle Incorporated, or Oracle Inc. Around Namorita was always deferential, but around this warrior, she would act tough. And you know, it's because she was with her cousin, you know, and she was treated like a cousin. She wasn't treated like a clone. She never actually knew she was a clone until later. And you know, at one point, and this is really cool. This is one of my favorite stories of her. She was doing like a patrol or something and saw this guy in a big metal suit. He looked like a mech warrior, and he called himself Sea Urchin. He would actually go and scavenge, you know, shipwrecks and stuff, but he had a bunch of Atlantean artifacts. She found him, tried to fight him. He destroyed her, beat her like literally black and blue. I mean, just utterly destroyed her. She ended up losing her swimsuit and putting on an ancient Atlantean battle armor. And she went and she got super tough at this point. She went and I think like ripped off his metal arms. Like she beat him worse than he ever beat her. But what he ended up doing to her was like he literally scalped her at one point. You know, so it really triggered a change in her. And she got really tough. She started taking things a little bit more seriously. She wasn't as easygoing. So yeah, that was it, and that was crazy. That was absolutely nuts. And then, you know, the team leader at the time, who was Night Thrasher, he took a hiatus from the Warriors. Namorita ended up leading the team. However, the stress of leading the Warriors, the revelation that she was actually a clone, and ruling Atlantis during Namor's absence all proved to be too much for her. She became drunk in a nightclub and left with the leader of the Poison Memories gang, who wanted to gain vengeance against the Warriors. So he stole information from Namorita's apartment, which was used to kidnap many of the Warriors' family members. After the surviving family members were rescued, Namorita's guilt over the incident forced her to leave the Warriors. You know, I mean, wouldn't you? I mean, seriously, wouldn't you? You know, she ended up trying to drink her problems away, which is you know, a good example of what not to do. You know, she did that. She ended up bringing someone home that ended up being like one of her enemies that she didn't recognize, and they used information to go after her friends' families. You know, like that's a really big mess up there. So Namorita ended up returning to Atlantis, only to be denied entry as the Atlanteans discovered her clone nature. You know, that's messed up. But, you know, that seemed to kind of be like the final catalyst for Namorita. She had an oversaturation of oxygen, coupled with the DNA that was spliced into her at the time of her creation. It caused her to change into a closer version of the original Atlanteans. Because of this, Namorita gave herself the name Chimera, and while fighting alongside the Warriors, she was captured and brainwashed by a terrorist organization, only to be rescued by Night Thrasher, who received a tip from a villain named the Mad Thinker. So, you know, she ended up feeling guilt over all this stuff. She decides, you know, she's just going to go back to basics. She's denied entry into her home, and then she ends up changing. She turns blue. I think her hair goes white from blonde, and she just goes nuts, you know. And then she gets brainwashed. So I mean, this is a heck of a story for her. Now, on one occasion, Namorita became covered with pus-filled boils. She was with the hero Nova at the time, and Nova saw her in this state and did not speak in time to reassure the emotionally vulnerable Namorita that his feelings for her had not changed. You know, he hesitated when she was like really vulnerable, and she took it really, really hard. His hesitation sent her over the edge, and she left. Crestfallen Namorita went to take a shower, and to her surprise, the skin ended up kind of like peeling off and returned to its original pink tone. She also shed her pointed ears, webbed hands, and glassy black eyes. Following this transformation, Namorita continued to mutate and develop new powers. She found that she could secrete burning acid or paralytic toxin that could become transparent. After her breakup with Nova, Namorita briefly dated Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, and co-ruled Atlantis in a council of 3 with Warlord Seth and the warrior Andromeda. Ultimately, Namorita and Nova came to terms over the breakup. Okay, so that's like her history, and that's a heck of a history, you know. She ended up doing these things, and she's like really emotional right now. The Human Torch kind of ended up being like a rebound. I mean, if you look at it. It was just a brief dating too. So, you know, I mean, it's definitely a fling. But she had a lot happen. And, you know, the bad thing about all this is like, when you have a lot of things happen to you and you feel really overwhelmed, you look for help. And the people there may want to be there to help. But you also have to take in their initial reactions. Like Nova still loved her. He just reacted. He was trying to process everything in, and you know, it was too much for her. She needed to be accepted, and he accepted her, but just not according to her timetable. And I think that that speaks to a lot of people when they're in some kind of crisis. You know, they look for help. And if help isn't right there and ready on their terms, and I'm just as guilty of it as anyone, they end up rejecting those people or rejecting that help when the help was gonna be there. You know, we just overreacted because we're in a crisis situation, and sometimes 1 second seems like a minute. So if you take a 5-second hesitation, to her, in her mind, going a mile a minute, she's been waiting there for an answer for 5 minutes. And that's just, you know, uncommonly long. So, you know, I think it's a really good representation there. Her powers, she has aquatic adaptation, which basically means she can breathe underwater and in the air. Superhuman strength, agility, reflexes, and durability. High-speed swimming. Her ankle wings grant her flight. She's got that paralyzing or acidic touch, and she can become transparent. Now, she's a lot like her cousin Namor in the fact that the longer he is out of water, ultimately, the weaker he is. Now, they're still superhumanly strong, you know, and that's kind of like a baseline because it deals with the pressures underwater. Like their bodies are used to it, so they're naturally stronger. But if they're out of water too long, they get that oversaturation of oxygen, like we mentioned before. You know, she ends up becoming a little irrational, a little bit more emotional, and her strength is not up to par. When her strength is up to par, she can trade blows with the best of them. You know, and it's just the lack of water. It's just the oversaturation of oxygen in her system. And you'll see it like a lot of times when Namor has an issue with people. A lot of times it's because he's been out of water too long and he's more emotional than anything. But yeah, so relationships. She had that little fling with Johnny Storm. And she's been in a relationship with Nova. And this isn't the one in the cartoons. This is Richard Rider. He was one of the original Buckethead Novas out there. So there's that. Fun facts. Namorita also appears in the Spider-Man episode, and I think this is like the 1970s cartoon Spider-Man episode, Wrath of the Submariner. She ends up sick due to pollution caused by the Kingpin. She also appears as a non-playable character in the game Marvel Ultimate Alliance. After people in Atlantis take over the city, she sends out a distress call when they kidnap her cousin Namor. While Namor is wounded, she acts as your guide through the Atlantis levels, and there's a special dialogue between her and Iceman. And lastly, she also appears as a non-playable character in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2. Tony Stark sees the New Warriors TV show on television. When it shows Namorita subduing Nitro, she ends up a victim in his large explosion. So, yeah. She's never actually a playable character. And it's because power-wise, it's pretty generic. I mean, when they write her, it's hard to do the acidic or paralyzing touch in a fighting kind of game, a beat-em-up game. You just end up getting super strength and you can fly and stuff. So, and there's a lot of other characters that can do that. So, she was always a secondary character, never actually a primary. So what do you guys think of her? What do you think of her history? I personally love it. I really, really do. I think that she's got so much potential. And I think that she's been through a lot, which plays out really well. Let me know what you think. Send me a message on Twitter at superdeepdive, or use the hashtag superherodeepdive. Leave me a comment on YouTube. Please don't comment that the video sucks, because I know. I got a new slideshow program. I'm trying to use the old one where I could time things a little bit better, but it is what it is. Be here for the podcast. The slideshow is just pictures. There's nothing else to it. So just take it and be happy. And if you're listening on Outward Fleet Radio, you are more than welcome as well to send me a message on Twitter. Or you can email me directly at b4itall, so b4itall at yahoo.com. And now we're going to hit my favorite part. This is the power expansion part. This is where I look at, are there any other stories I would do? Could their powers be boosted? Would you want to see them in a movie? Would you want to see them in a series? Like, where would you want to go with this? Do they need another comic book series? We've covered it all. We've actually covered storylines. We've covered movies. We've covered shows. What do you think? I looked at it, and we know that, like I said before, Namor is slated to hit the big screen soon. So she should definitely have a place on the small screen. Let's take a look at it. Like, what if, when Namor makes his debut, there's a mention of her, and it could be something small, like, he could name drop. He could do like, my cousin Nita, something, or, yes, I have family here. Yes, I have a cousin. She's, blah, blah, blah. She's going to college here in town. Something. It could be anything. Just name drop. Just allude to her. And then the series, we actually do a series. Disney Plus, Netflix, I don't care. I don't care. It needs to be a series, but it needs to be an ongoing series. I don't want to do just like the 6 episodes. I want to do something ongoing, kind of like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Even on Netflix, like the Daredevil and Jessica Jones you could say those were ongoing series. They had more than 6 episodes, like on Disney, rather than like Disney Plus, and it definitely opened up. They left plenty of room for extra seasons if they wanted. So I think they should do this. Let's start a series about her. Like she's going to college in New York. She's a superhero. And it doesn't have to be a big superhero. She's just righting wrongs, and it can build from there. Let me see here. Being a superhero, coping with all of that. And she's also trying to, she's going to college. She's also trying to live up to her responsibilities as the cousin of the Prince of Atlantis. So, with that, if Atlantis is made known, just like Wakanda before, there's probably going to be meetings, fancy dinners that she'd have to attend, like all that kind of stuff. Just where she'd have to make an appearance. So, she'd have this opening, I guess. It's kind of like, the character itself always had this heart of action. It's kind of like this toughness about her. But now she's got to do all these things. So that's kind of like comedy gold right there, Like, it just opens the door for that. We can have her actually. What if she's there with her uncle or her cousin's company, Oracle Incorporated, and she is checking out a disturbance down at the docks or something, that way it keeps her near the water. She finds a sea urchin. So that's like maybe the big bad in season 1. She goes into it. She's fighting him. Because we have to remember, like, sea urchin gave her one of the worst beatings she ever had. Like, sea urchin actually scalped her. So let's have that redone. Like, she's naive. She's doing all this stuff. She's trying to keep up with her grades and the social life and all that stuff. Then she goes and fights this guy, and he ultimately, like, just literally hands her ass to her. So that's like towards the end of the first season. Then we end up seeing her, like, getting attended to by medical professionals. They're looking at her and they realize that she's a clone. So like it could be maybe she's healing abnormally fast or something like that, or something just doesn't seem right. Maybe there's an extra DNA strand or something that doesn't make sense. So it turns out she's a clone. Then in season 2, we have her coping with the fact that she's a clone. She's still trying to keep the increased workload in school, her hero responsibilities, and helping maybe, all the princess stuff or, the dignitary stuff, and maybe even helping run, Oracle Incorporated. But on top of that, she's got to deal with her own home of Atlantis basically casting her out because she's a clone. So she's got nowhere to go. She's like a woman alone in the world, basically. Like, I think that there's so much that can be in this. And the beautiful thing is she's a woman. She's a woman going through this. So, like, we need good female role models. And we're getting them. We're getting them in TV. We're getting them in movies. We need to keep it going. And I'm not saying drown out all the male role models, because they're there and that's perfect too. Don't get me wrong. But what I want to do is I want us to see, as a culture, normalize heroes and role models of both men and women, so it doesn't become an issue anymore. Like, let's saturate it with both. That way, we can actually start seeing people for the decisions they're making and not their gender. It gives us something to look up to. And that's just my opinion. If you have a different opinion, I am more than happy to talk about that with you in a respectful way. Because I'm not trying to be bigoted at all. I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I really want her to be able to look up to someone, with confidence. And that's kind of my mentality going into this when I look at them. But But here's the thing, like, she's strong, she's feminine, she's smart, she's tough, she's, royal, she's regal, she's ready to fight. She's got the making to be a real, real positive role model. And here's the one thing that I don't want happening, though. And I've seen it before in shows. Keep her in school. Keep her in school. Show the young minds that you can make things work without quitting something else. Like, even if she goes part-time, do that if you have to. And that's fine. But don't let her quit school. It'll show a balance to the character that most role models, male or female, don't have. And it'll help set her apart from other characters. And I think that comic book fans especially, but any fans in general, because parents are going to watch this with their kids. My family and I, we watch all the Disney Plus, Marvel episodes that come out. We watch it as a family because everyone loves it. So let's have that happen. So we can have that positive role model. But I guarantee you, if you keep her in school, even with the increased workload, keep her in school so she's overcoming everything. She just maybe has to scale back, but she's not quitting something. Everyone will appreciate it more. Everyone will. It will resonate. So, what do you guys think? Am I totally off base with this? Do I have a hit on our hands? Let me know. Do you have a better idea? Let me know. Shoot me a message. Catch me on Twitter. Do whatever. Leave a comment on YouTube. I would love to hear your comments on this. And like always, if you have any questions, comments, critiques, if you have requests for other heroes to be covered, I am all ears. I love this. I love doing this because we get to explore things. We get to cover heroes that aren't necessarily important, but could really be important. And I really hope that you guys end up becoming fans of some of these heroes. So, take that with a grain of salt. Some of them are definitely better than others. I think this one could be great, though. That's all I've got. I will catch you all next week. In the meantime, be blessed, be happy, be safe, be smart. And if you're not smart, don't get caught. All right? I'll see you later. Bye-bye.